What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to take some billet old school weld wheels and hopefully get professional level polish results. In order to do that, the first thing we got to talk about is this and this are not how you're going to get there. Now, we have a lot to go over in this video. Depending on where you're at, if you've tried polishing with solid bar compounds and airway buffs before, you might have more experience than somebody else. My goal with this is to take somebody that has never even messed with any of that and get them to the point where they can polish their own wheels. So we're going to go over several different segments. The first half of this is probably going to be a lot of talking about what everything is, maybe some do's and don'ts, things of that nature. We're also going to go over some of the safety stuff. So with that said, before we get into what all this stuff is behind me, how to use it, all that good stuff, I want to talk to you about whether or not polishing your wheels versus sending them to somebody is the right move for you. Everybody's kind of got their own take on that, depending on how much time and money and everything else that you have. So let's just say, hypothetically, you find the set of wheels you're looking for. Neither of these wheels, these are both 17 by 10, 8 on 6.5 mountain crushers. You can see these are what we would call roached. Somebody attempted to polish these before me. None of the wheels that you see here have been polished by me yet. So when it comes to metal polishing, first off, this stuff is extremely dirty. It is bad for your health. You absolutely have to have a respirator, eye protection, gloves. I even sometimes wear a Tyvek suit just to keep the stuff off of me. The other big thing that comes into that, again, it's very unhealthy. It can create early onset Alzheimer's, dementia, some other things like that. So you have to mask up and keep yourself clean. The second thing would be cost. I did the math on it, and to buy yourself a decent but cheap polisher, right here is a Bauer, I can't remember the part number, it's a variable speed 3500 RPM polisher. You need about 3 of these buffs, and you need a couple of bars of compound. That's just what you need to get started polishing. That in itself, depending on what you go with, a Zephyr Ultra Shine kit's another $100. Some PPE stuff is, you know, probably another $50-75. So you're $250 in the hole before you even put the rubber to the road. With weld wheels, what makes these a little bit different than doing American Forces and things of that nature is the tire has to come off to get excellent results with these. The reason being is because of the valve stem location. I cannot go and sand behind that and do a good job unless that is out. That means the tire has to be off. Now we talk about what we need to actually spin it, because it's much easier to work this barrel while the wheel is turning. So I built myself, this is just a makeshift Harbor Freight engine stand, and what I did here is I bolted up an 8 by 6.5 Duramax front wheel bearing to it, and then I get spacer adapters. So I can do Ford 8 lug, I can do GM 8 by 180, I can do 6 lug GM, I can do 5 by 5.5, 5 by 4.75. All that stuff adds up. So to get yourself in the door with some good sandpaper, some equipment, a wheel stand, you're talking at least $600 or $700. So I can't speak for everybody in different areas. I'm usually about $500 or $600 just to start. You know, reason for that, the cost of materials, the time. You know, some of these guys, the great ones out there, everybody by now probably knows that Chris Pointer and Parker Van Beelen, those guys are like the gods of restoring welds. They have earned their stripes. Everyone in the industry knows who they are, and they do absolutely phenomenal work. The problem is they're so good that they may not be able to get to you. I myself am not taking on a whole lot of work because I have another kid on the way. So there's some awesome guys out there. I want to shout out to Andy Pohl. He's out of Dayton, Ohio, does phenomenal work. Frank Perea is down in, I believe it's Albuquerque, New Mexico. You can try to reach out to these guys. Maybe they don't have the book that other guys do, or they can get you in. You know, again, the price is something that you guys got to figure out whether or not it's worth it to you to make the investment to do it yourself. And the other thing is 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get the results that you want the very first try. So it's something that you're going to learn. You're going to screw up and make mistakes. Hopefully you fix your mistakes. Hopefully I can help you shave down a lot of that learning curve, because it was pretty rough in the beginning. I've been doing it about 5 years now. I do a whole lot of other things other than just wheels. So with all that said, let's talk about what some of this stuff is. So we're going to start at this end of the table and kind of work out that way. So over here, this is my tried and true Makita. It's a variable speed 3,200 RPM machine. It's a 9237CX. This is the old reliable GA7021C Makita. That is a 6,000 RPM angle grinder. Now, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do everything on a 3,500 or 3,200 RPM variable speed machine. Nobody should be starting with an angle grinder, in my opinion. Reason being, first off, none of these wheels are rated to turn more than like 2,000 or 2,500 RPM. So yes, we are, I guess you could say, violating OSHA standards by running it any faster than that. If one of these comes apart or there's an issue, this machine will hurt you. This one will send you to the hospital potentially with some missing digits. So again, let's stay away from this. Let's learn on this. If you get more proficient and you want to work into this, by all means, go right for it. So we brought up the Bauer machine. This is my backup. This is a great machine to start with. It's around $100. You know, if you burn it up, take it back to Harbor Freight and get another one. This is what we call a buffing rake. We're going to use these to clean the wheels out. We also rake them in with it. That allows the buffs to take in compound. You're going to need a good set of safety flanges. So these are 10x3 safety flanges, which, by the way, all these wheels are 10x3. And what I mean by that is that this hole is 3 inches inside diameter. The outside diameter is 10 inches. So when it comes to welds, especially anything below an 18-inch diameter, these are what's called a 12x5. I love running these on American Forces and any of the 20s and 22s and stuff like that. Just the added overall diameter of these, it just seems like they cut faster and harder and all that good stuff. So with that said, again, let's start with the 10x3. They fit in the wheels a lot nicer, you know, especially on a 15 or a 16.5. Now, these are not necessary, but if you get to a point where you want to start playing with some new stuff, these are double stack flanges. What that allows you to do is take 2 buffs and mount them on a machine at the same time and run them. So again, not necessary, but they help. These are actually mini buffs. The thing I like about these is because they're so small in diameter, they actually get into these little edges really, really nice. Not that the bigger buffs won't, but certain wheel designs, they seem like they help a little bit more. I want to give a huge shout out and speak for a second, shameless plug, on Spectrum Alberta. This is a Canadian company. They're in Edmonton, Alberta, I believe. Chris Drinkwater and Stefan Touchette kind of run the show there, and they were instrumental in my learning as a brand new polisher. So over the years, I've kind of had a loyalty to them. Chris was generous enough to send me some of these new Hilzinger buffs. These are actually an American-made buff, and I believe that Spectrum is the only ones that carries these right now. So a little bit of polish history without going down a rabbit hole. A couple years ago, there was a company out of Chicago, Illinois called Matchless, and they made the absolute best buffing wheel on the market. And I'll show it to you. So these here are all Matchless buffs. I got a great big stack of 12x5s, and I still got quite a few of these 10x3s. So what made these, they're kind of unique in the sense that if you look at the backside, they just have that signature slant. Like, it's a very aggressive arc, if you will. The balance on these and just the way that they behaved on the aluminum and stainless that I was working on, they're just nothing else out there like it. With that said, they're not available anymore. Those wheels were bought, or the company Matchless was bought by a different company. Not going to get into who that was and all that kind of stuff. Do your own research. But they took a great thing and made it not great anymore. You're not going to find those, so you need a different option. There's some other companies out there. You know, I think everybody's heard of Zephyr and Renegade and all that. And I'm not saying anything against them one way or another. Everybody starts somewhere. I got started on Zephyr personally. I have nothing against their stuff, but I started looking for more and more to try to get to the results that I wanted. So these buffs are much denser. They're going to behave a lot differently than a lot of the entry-level buffs and buff companies that are out there. I mean, they actually make this stuff for industrial manufacturing and polishing. So, you know, again, it's very, very high quality. So to explain these, every one of these is a different stiffness, and from company to company, nobody really has any consistency with the colors. You see that with the Matchless buffs. You got, you know, the violet is actually the hardest one there. Orange is a little softer, blue's a little softer, and then yellow's the softest, at least in that stack. So with Hilzinger, that's the part number. This is going to be your stiffest buff, at least at the time that this video is being made. The next stiffest, these two are probably going to be your cutting buffs. That's what you're going to start with. So the next one is an 8882 yellow mill treat. That's a primary cut. Again, a little bit softer than this one. The next one is a 6060 heavy clear treat second cut. This is usually what I'm going to be using for a coloring stage. So this stage right here, and then the 8682 untreated. This is going to be a firm finish wheel, and then the 6060 untreated, that's what I like to finish with. That's a very soft untreated wheel. So if you come over here and look at this 439T, a lot of people don't understand the menzerna compound bar numbers, so let me help you with that. So 439T, you notice right down there at the bottom it's got a red number 2. That's going to be your heaviest cutting. So as we go down the list, my personal color bar, at least for welds, is P164. See how it's got a 3? So the 3 is going to be less aggressive, more clarity. Then we get into our finish buffs, or I'm sorry, finish compounds. Number 5, that is going to be the absolute shiniest, least amount of hash. It also is not going to cut, so you're going to essentially start here with 439 and this wheel, and then for me, I'm going to go the 6060 heavy clear treat second cut with 164, and then we're going to finish with 60/60 and M5. Now you notice I've set a couple of extra bars here. The reason I did that is mainly to give you guys options. So 480W is a bar, it's a color bar, it's an in-between bar, it's not a heavy cut, but a lot of guys get great finish results with this. When it comes down to one versus the other, the best I can tell you is do a little experimenting on your own and see what you like. 175 is probably one of the easiest finish bars to work with. It's super nice, it cleans up, it just leaves a beautiful finish. What I've found and what I've heard is that a lot of guys struggle when they go to the M5. The reason for that, in my opinion, is the M5 is so high luster that it will actually highlight things that you didn't really know were there until you get to the last phase. So again, that 175 is going to give you an excellent shine. If you're brand new, you're probably not going to be able to tell the difference between M5 and 175 if you were looking at a wheel. So 175 is a great option. The sandpaper I'm using, again, all Spectrum. So, and this is a big pet peeve of mine. I can't tell you how many times I see people that are talking about going to 2,000 and 3,000 grit for metal polishing and wet sanding and all that. You don't need any of that. We're going to start, the lowest grit that we're going to do in sandpaper is 80 grit. Then you're going to go to 120, then 180, then 320, then 600, then 800. Nobody should be starting with their first set of wheels and doing this with 80 grit. You should get comfortable sanding 600, 800, all that kind of stuff. When you start getting a little bit more proficient with it, and you want to take something like that, that's just absolutely roached, been, you know, sitting in somebody's backyard collecting salt and water and everything else for 20 years, that's when you're going to get into the lower grits. So we got a couple of sanding machines here. We are going to be doing rotary sanding today. At least I'm going to show you guys how to do that. It's not for the faint of heart. The only time that this machine gets applied is in the barrel, never the face. We're going to use our orbital. These are all 5-inch, by the way. That's how we get to the face on these. Occasionally I like to use this machine. Now you notice this has got a super flexible backing plate, but rather than using the orbital, you can actually use this and it will kind of conform into the wheel. I usually do that with 600 and 800 grit only. I want to hog off the material with the rotary because it's much more efficient. I'm also, you know, competent in my ability to use the rotary sander. So now that we've kind of gone through everything, I want to talk to you about some of the cleaning and all the in-between stuff. So this is Easy Bright. This is what we call wheel acid, or you hear it called aluminum brightener. This is a very controversial topic, okay? Some guys swear not to use this and some guys swear by it. Personally, I love it. The only time you're ever going to use this is right before you're about to polish the whole wheel. You shouldn't be using it to, you know, in between polish sessions or anything like that. Once you get these things restored, there's really no reason to use that. But what it does is it goes in here and you spray it on. I mix this 50-50 in a pump sprayer with water. You spray it all over these, and all the dirt and all the brake dust and everything that's on it, it just, I mean, it literally falls off. So we'll show you that today. The next thing I use a lot of is mineral spirits. That's great for cleanup in between passes. So when you get done with your cut, especially on something like these stone crushers here, you have all the rivets and design in the outer lip. You're going to need something to get the compound out of that, and that's where the mineral spirits comes in. Same thing with back here in the lug holes. So a couple of extra tools that we haven't talked about yet. I got a few things I want to show you. So these occasionally work, and I say occasionally with a big asterisk, because like you can see, it'll get into this sidewinder. Yeah, there you go. It gets into that sidewinder window fairly well. It's not going to get right up into the corner. On the Stone Crusher, it doesn't fit at all. So how do we get in there and get to the windows? I have two options for you. This is a piece of, I think it's 3/8 welding rod, and what you can see I've done here is I've cut a slot into it, and I can actually pack material in there, as far as you know, some flannel, microfiber, or whatever. Put some compound on that and actually get in and work in these holes. I do like this. You will see a lot of guys out there using Dremels. Got nothing against the Dremel. I have one right here. I use it all the time. The only difference between the Dremel and this is if you run this on a drill, you get a lot more torque out of it. You can kind of push on some of the window edges and things like that. This is all speed, no torque. So that kind of covers that. Now, something else I want to touch on briefly. A lot of guys will disagree with me on this, but I'm a big proponent for being brand loyal, especially in the metal polishing stuff, for two reasons. One, because if I have a problem with the product or anything like that, I can go to them and feel a lot better about having a conversation saying, I'm trying to use this, it's not working out for me, I need help. So that's reason number one. Number two, I might be a little bit biased, but I do feel that they have the best product out there. I've tried a lot of stuff over the years, and again, I just never been able to repeat the quality of the shine that I've been able to get with their stuff. This is all, again, very, very high level stuff. Menzerna, although you haven't heard of it here in the United States, they've been around since, I believe, the 1890s in Europe. I think they started in Germany. One last thing I want to talk about on sandpaper. Guys, I have had situation after situation where a guy will reach out to me, hey, I went through all the sanding steps that you told me, went through all the grits and everything, yada, 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 and I went to polish and I'm getting a terrible result. First off, again, we don't wet sand. A couple reasons for that. Aluminum, unlike paint, can take heat. So you can really hog off material and everything with the rotary sander a lot quicker. Wet sanding makes a huge mess with aluminum, and sometimes it does some weird stuff to it. But the other thing that is important to know is that this sandpaper is designed specifically for dry sanding aluminum. You are not going to find paper at the hardware store that is really capable of dealing with that kind of abuse. So these sheets of paper, they're extra thick. That's one of the things I love about them. If you bump into something like the side wall or the back wall or whatever, it won't shred immediately like a lot of other paper brands will. And it's got a specific type of coating. I can't remember what it's called, but that coating, again, is designed for aluminum sanding, or at least metal sanding, I should say. So if you're going to get started and you want to sand your wheels, I strongly recommend getting good paper in the beginning. Don't go to the hardware store and create issues that you don't even know that you're creating. But that's it. That's my 2 cents on that. One last thing, if you guys are interested in checking any of this stuff out from Spectrum, we have a discount code. It's doing a couple things. First off, I get a small piece of it. It helps me purchase materials for my next job. The second thing, you guys are going to get a discount on it. You know, depending on what it is, the discount code is brackish. The other thing that we're looking to do with this is kind of get an idea for how much traffic this is going to help Spectrum generate off of this video. And quite frankly, that's going to help me justify making more in the future. So if you want to check any of that stuff out, again, all the buffing wheels you see here, the metal polishing compounds, as well as the sandpaper, again, first in class, second to none. I've tried a lot of stuff and I can't say much bad about them. One thing I did miss, this stuff here is pretty amazing. So this is a polishing cream, not to be mistaken with a liquid polish. So when you get done sanding, cutting, polishing, finishing your wheel, you can take this stuff and put it on a flannel and apply it with a machine with a foam backing, and just kind of wrap the flannel around it. Maybe I can show you that later. This will take your shine and really just bring it to the next level and knock out a lot of hash and things of that nature. So now that we've kind of covered that, I want to show you a couple things. We kind of talked about this in the beginning, but this is a roached wheel. You know, guys are going to charge you to polish that. Me personally, I'm probably going to start with 80 grit on something like that, and you know, it's going to have a bill with it for sure. This is what I would call an unacceptable polish job. Now, that said, I'm going to walk that back just a second. So if you're charging people for polishing, you should be charging based on your skill. If you're brand new and you're kind of figuring things out and, you know, getting decent at it, or maybe you're helping a buddy on his wheels or something like that, and you're not charging much, maybe a couple $100, you know, whatever, something to justify your time, getting paid to, you know, teach yourself or whatever, then something like this would be okay in my book. If you're spending a lot of money, let's just say anything north of $300 or $400, I would never let a wheel go like this. Now, this is my 17 by 10 sidewinder. I'm going to try to zoom in on that. This guy paid his polisher $500, and if you look close, see all the all of that right there. In fact, let me do this. Okay, so I have flash on. Those are rotary sanding marks. These were just polished. They never cut the lug pad, which I'm going to show you how to do. But that is absolutely unacceptable. There's nobody should be leaving sanding marks in a wheel that you're paying somebody $500 to polish. So again, you know, keep that in the back of your head. I am a big believer that there is a little bit of an art to this. It's not just a job, and it should be treated that way. If you have a good polisher, you are paying for artwork. You're not paying for a job. So keep that in mind if you're looking to hire somebody out to do these things, especially if you have a really nice set of wheels. The first thing I want to talk about are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to sanding. So first off, usually when I start on a wheel, the first thing I'm doing is working on the face. And when you work on the face, the proper way to do it is with a machine like this. This is something called an interface pad. This is only used for the barrel, okay? This right here, when you're sanding the face, you're going to put your sandpaper right on that. You're going to come in here and you're going to keep it dead flat. So let's talk about this real quick. Why are we not using this? We're not using these because if you put sandpaper on this and then push it flat up against here, it is going to want to roll in to the edges of these, and a lot of people will not want to buy the wheels from you, or you know, it doesn't look right after that edge has been rolled. So this right here, the interface pad, never ever ever sand the face of the wheel up here, okay? This goes right here, and that is so that way as this is turning, it is going to allow the sandpaper to curl and conform to the wheel. So if you're not comfortable rotary sanding, which is fine. In fact, I encourage you not to do it in the very beginning. You would take your orbital, put the interface on there like that, and you're going to sand just like this and work your way all the way around, keep it moving, all that good stuff. When we go to rotary sand, you're still doing the same thing. So, sorry, it's not on there very straight. Try to keep it on straighter than that, or else it'll walk a lot. But this is a 1/2 inch, I believe it's 1/2 inch, hook and loop interface pad. This is a DeWalt DWE 43240 Inox. That's what it is, 43240 Inox, for anyone interested. This is one badass rotary sander. It's actually a grinder. You just switch the head out for a 5-inch sanding plate. Now, if you want a rotary sand and you don't feel like spending about $250, I think is what these go for, you can actually use your polisher. So those sanding heads are the same thread on these that you will be on your polisher. All you'd have to do is bolt it on there and you know, kind of go to town from there. I'm going to hit that one more time because I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. If we're sanding a face, we do not use an interface pad. It's going to go dead flat like that, and you're going to work yourself all the way around, okay? If we're doing a barrel, we're going to put our interface pad on. If you want an orbital, it's going to go like that, okay? And if you're going to rotary, your rotary is only going to be for the barrel, and you're still going to have the interface pad. Now, one of the biggest things that I fought in the beginning, I think everybody fights it, and I get a lot of questions about it even today, is whether or not you got all your sanding out from the last grit before you go to the next grit. So I want to show you a trick with that. Everybody knows what this is. Sharpie is your best friend. So what you're going to do, now let's say you're starting, you haven't done any sanding or anything yet. So I got a couple of little deep gouges and pockets. What I can do is kind of color those in, right? And that Sharpie will actually stay down in those until they have been sanded all the way through and they're gone. There's a couple of them up here, so I'll hit those. Now, for the faces and everything else, one of the things that you can do that will be instrumental in helping you figure out whether or not you've sanded your last grit out. So what I coach people on is to take this thing and just mark up the whole wheel everywhere. You can do in here, get in between the barrels. Sorry, I think my Sharpie's going dead, but put marks all over everything. So we're going to pretend that we're sanding this, okay? So let's just say I sanded all of these out, and maybe let's say we started at 320 grit. So the next sandpaper in that order is going to be 600 grit. I'm going to repeat the Sharpie trick before I start sanding with 600 grit. That will help me figure out if my 320 grit marks have been removed with my 600. So again, you know, get yourself these little, the smaller Sharpies or standard size Sharpies, whatever you want to call them. They're not my favorite. If you can get one of them big fat ones, they're awesome for doing this. But like I said, take this thing and color on the wheel in between every single grit you sand. If you start with 80, use this, mark up your wheel, go to 120. If you start with, or you do 120, do this, go to 180, so on and so forth. So that will definitely help you get a better result with your sanding. One thing I didn't mention with sanding, if you're going to rotary sand, I tend to spin the machine at about 5,000 RPMs. My opinion is with aluminum, that's about the limit before you start burning up too much paper too quick because it's so much heat. So if you don't have that machine I talked about, again, you're probably going to be using your polisher. At that point, you're only going to be turning 3,500 RPMs anyway, and that'll be just fine. When I get to the highest grit, which is 800 grit, I do not rotary sand that grit in the barrel. I will actually take the 800 and put it on my orbital with the interface pad to do my last pass. And that does two things. First off, it doesn't burn up the 800 immediately, which is what the rotary machine does. The other thing that it does is it actually highlights any sanding from the previous passes, and I can just keep working that orbital until all of that is gone. There's some guys out there that actually rotary orbital every single step. I don't think that you need to do that. Again, if you're not used to looking at your sanding and figuring out what grit is which, this will help you, and you shouldn't have to switch back and forth on every single grit. Now, back to this tool for a minute. This is our 3/8 welding rod that, you know, again, I cut a notch into. Some of these older wheels you see down in here, I mean, it's pretty trashed in there. And you can Dremel sand this, but in my opinion, Dremel sanding I feel like it takes forever. Never really been a big fan. What I do like is taking this, and I'll cut little strips of these grits depending on how crazy I'm going with it, and put the strip of sandpaper in this thing. Then I'll put it on my drill, and I can actually go in here and sand these if I want. So this is really nice. It's very universal and really helps with that. Coming over here for a second. Again, we talked about having to remove the valve stem before we start. That is the biggest thing that interferes with the whole job. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, well, I want to do my back sides too. Well, we can do that. So one of the spacers I have, it's not this one, but it's an 8x6.5 2-inch spacer. I have 2 extra tall lugs, and that will actually allow me to flip this wheel around, mount it backwards, and then I can sand and polish the back sides. Now, if you are going to do that, there's a couple things I'm going to suggest to you. So these right here, this is just like non-skid matting. I mean, I bought it from a hardware store. I think you could use it as like toolbox lining and all that. I like to take this when I'm mounting this reverse. So if I flip this wheel around, I'm putting the face up against this wheel bearing or the spacer, and I don't want to create extra work for myself. So I will actually put this in between what I'm bolting it to when the wheel is turned around, so it's not leaving a groove in and around here. It seems to work really well for that. So just something to keep in mind if you are planning on doing your backs. Another thing I'd like to touch on, you notice we got a couple of different caps sitting here. The ever elusive titty cap, very highly desired. We have a couple of hex caps, and we even have a push through. There's a couple of different ways to do these. Now, the ones with the bolt holes, basically everything here except for the push through cap, we can actually bolt these to a piece of plywood. And then what we're going to use is a tool called a jaw horse. I'll show you that later. And polish them that way. That's probably the safest way to do these. There's another method where you can actually take, like, you take your polisher, you put it in a jaw horse, and you basically turn it into a pedestal style buffer. That is one of the better ways to do a push through cap. The thing about that is you have to be very cautious of the edges of this. If you catch an edge with a buff the wrong way, it will send it flying. No different with any of these other caps. I usually do my titty caps that way. Again, if you're new, don't do that. Get a couple of bolts, or actually I think they call them lag screws, and screw these into a board, and then you can clamp the board or the plywood and then polish them while they're clamped down. They're not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to ruin one of your nice caps. Now that we got a lot of the important talking points out of the way, let's go ahead and get some work done. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, I have an American Force right next to the weld that we're going to work on. The reason I have the American Force, I want to show you how effective this acid is at breaking up this brake dust that's baked in. On the back sides of welds, usually there's some kind of like coating or whatever. In order to make it shiny, you have to sand through it, but it usually doesn't show the cleanup quite as good. So what I'm going to do, I have my acid 50-50 with water and a pump sprayer. I have just a squirt of Dawn dish soap in there to help it stick. Pumped up, and we're just going to shoot everything. Now the most important thing with this acid is you cannot let it dry to the surface. So as soon as you're done, you need to go ahead and rinse it off right away, and rinse it very thoroughly. Now you notice I sprayed the back sides first. The reason for that is I really want a nice even, don't mind the dryer lint that comes out of the vent over there. So I spray the back sides first before I do the front sides. And the reason for that is I feel like it leaves a much more even result by doing the back sides first, because you gotta remember, we're mostly focused on the front sides of the wheel. Make sure you get inside of all the windows really good. Again, we're doing 2 wheels just so you have good visual reference. Take a look at what that one looks like, all that crud that's up in the crusher ring. So we're going to soak it down really good. And you notice, like, I have a couple of streaks over there. When I go to wash this thing down, I really don't want those streaks. I want it as even as I can possibly get it. Sometimes what I'll do is let it eat for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then I will actually come back and hit it one more time before I begin. Okay, so you can see we've let our acid eat. I'm going to give it one more quick hit with the pump sprayer. Let's hope I have enough to do it. I always spray off the back sides, then I do the front sides. It's just a personal preference. I'm not saying you got to do one or the other. Come on. Alright, quick hit. Get it nice and white again. Same thing with this one. Alright, let's go ahead and hit that side. Alright, so not too hateful. It took out a lot. If I did one more hit on the back sides of these, it would probably make all that go away. I'm actually surprised. This this backside must have been done before, because that black is not there, or at least it's not all the way there. Anyway, let's hit our front sides. Again, I'm gonna give it one more even coat. Hit it one more time. Get it all the same color. right, beautiful. Let's get her sprayed off. Alright, so we got these thoroughly rinsed. Again, very important, do not let acid dry to this wheel. That will create problems that you will have to sand out. That's our American Force, again, just for reference. Back sides of these, I guess the brake dust is a little more caked on there than I would have expected, but don't mind all the crap, but yeah, they're clean. You're probably wondering why I'm already dirty. Spoiler alert, that's because I've already done the backside. You'll see that later on in the video. So we got our acid wash taken care of. We're about to start sanding. Just so you know, again, acid being one of those things that some people love it or hate it. That's one of the things that Spectrum and I disagree on. I love it. You know, a lot of times they don't use it at all, and that's fine. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So, talking about sanding, we brought up our Sharpie. I got the queen of the double wide here. So, we're going to mark this thing all up, especially on the face, the barrel. If we got any really deep nicks, like I got a couple right here, we're going to color those in really nice. Otherwise, we are going to use this. What I'm doing right now is I'm giving myself a reference. Now, when you get better at sanding, you really won't need that. You'll be able to visually look at it after you do a ton of these things and physically see where you need to work. The crusher ring. So these things, they're a love-hate situation within the weld world. The main reason people hate them is because there's not a lot that you can do to fix problems that's up in here in between these rivets. So you can do a little bit of hand sanding maybe. You can kind of get the outer edge of it. You can get this, and that's where we're going to focus a lot of our effort on. The problem with sanding in here is it's very difficult to do without affecting this design. So we'll cut that really hard. I might actually get a mini buff out and let you guys see what the mini buff can do just as far as getting into the tight crevices and things. But other than that, we're going to start sanding. Once we go from 80 to 800 grit inside of the barrel, we're actually going to dismount the wheel. We're going to cut the lug pad, which is right here, and then we're going to put it back on here and start polishing. I found out in doing the back sides already that I'm going to be working from a very awkward angle, trying to give you guys the best vantage point that I possibly can on what's going on as I'm working. So bear with me if you see the sander chatter or something weird happens like that. You know, it's kind of because of that. Normally when I'm working, I'm sitting dead square to the wheel. If the wheel stops, which you don't want it to do when you're sanding, especially the barrel, I will restart, make sure that if there's any kind of divot or anything like that, I make sure I fully sand that out. I'd like to thank Austin and Maya Sala. They sold me these wheels out of Florida. We played hell with FedEx trying to get them back up to Maryland. They ended up going to the depot about 3 or 4 times. Eventually we got it, and again, can't thank them enough for working with me on the sale on these things. We're going to start working on the face first. I got my Sharpie ready. Again, since we're doing the face, go ahead and mark all this up so you guys have good visual reference. Not in every case, but in a lot of cases, you do not have to go as deep on the face as you do the actual barrel. The main reason I want to go to 80 grit on the barrel, not that this wheel really needs it, it's not in that bad a shape. I want to actually, these wheels have ribs that kind of run this way, and I want to smooth those out and get the nicest looking barrel that I can. So I'm going to start with 180 grit on the face right here. And then once I get the face done, if I need to go lower to get out some of the imperfections and stuff, I will. If not, I'm just going to pick up and go 320, 600, then 800. In the barrel, we're going to start at 80. We're going to go 80, 120, 180, 320, 600. And that will, oh, and 800, sorry. That will put us ready to polish. No different than body work. The prep is key. So the better job you do now, the better job we will see when we get done. One more thing. Remember, we're going to, for the faces, put our paper on there and be dead flat, just like that. When I come out to do the outer edge of this ring, I'm probably going to use the DA. I might actually break out the rotary. Now, what I don't want to do, remember, I don't want to impact this face or the flat area with the rivets very much. So the best way to do that is just to sand it with no interface. When we go to put the rotary in the barrel, that's when this interface pad will come back out. All right, 180 is done. I'm gonna throw one more sheet on. Just make one more cleanup pass. I'm pretty happy with that. All of our Sharpies going. So we'll hit it one more time, move to our 320. I'm going to stop it real quick. Notice that our Sharpie is no longer visible right here. I mean, it's 100% gone. That means that we have officially killed off our 180 grit with 320. In my opinion, sandpaper is cheap, time is not. So if I don't think that the grit is really working as well or it's getting weak, I'll go ahead and throw another sheet on and keep going. Alright, so our faces are done. If you do not have a wheel stand, meaning you cannot rotate the wheel left and right, that's okay. There's a way to do this, which is just like this. So you have your interface pad, your sandpaper, you're going to stick it right to this guy, and you're going to go in your barrel, and you're just going to crease back and forth, trying to keep it nice and even. It's not the fastest way to do it, but it will work. And you just move the wheel to a different position and keep working. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is this outer lip. This is the only time you're ever going to see me using a rotary with zero interface pad on it. And what my goal is to take this and go right here and just wrap around the corner. Now that we're moving on to rotary sanding, I'm going to show you the importance of the rope. So this right here is my foot brake. You're going to put your foot in there and wrap it around the back side of the wheel. And if you need to slow the wheel down, you will hit or basically push down on that rope, and that will either stop the wheel or slow it down. You don't want to stop the wheel from turning. If it does stop or if it's getting really slow, lift off and reset yourself. What I like to do is just give it a quick turn by hand, then put the sander on. You have to be careful to pay attention to which way the sander is turning the wheel. So this sander only turns in one direction. So right now, since it turns this way, I would want the wheel, let's see if I can, you want it turning that way. So I would kick it this way and then push it up on there. I'll show you what that looks like. Got a piece of 180 grit. Remember, since I'm doing this and I want to stay off of these, I do not want to tilt it in that way. I'm going to start flat and I'm going to come this way. Now that I got the material that I want hogged off, I'm going to switch back to my orbital just to level everything out a little bit. So that was 180 grit. We're going to go and do 320 right now. Okay, so that whole time I was being very careful not to let the sander walk its way down into here. That is pretty much going to be polish only. Now what I will do, I just threw a sheet of 600 on. I'm going to try to feather out a couple of these little edges where it's like nicked into the edge. So I kind of tilt the sander and just very lightly work that back and forth and see if that stuff comes out. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said, we got some of the nicks just right out of this outer edge. If there's anything in here, we'll see what we could do with the buffing wheel. We're going to move on to our rotary sanding. This is really where the magic happens in terms of making these wheels look nice, is in the barrel. A couple things to note before we start rotary sanding. This back half an inch or so, it's kind of tricky. Sometimes it'll fight you with both sanding as well as polishing. Anywhere that there's a dip, I might actually get one of my sidewinders out just to show you how to sand that bevel in the wheel. These are pretty much flat, so they're pretty straightforward, but you might have to spend a little extra time anytime that you have a dip or a slight crease in the wheel. Usually I'll just get an extra grit of sandpaper out just to hit it and make sure that I cover everything. So again, we're starting with 80 grit, and as we go I will write down what grit we're on, and I will go ahead and mark everything up so that way you can watch it disappear as we go. Something I should note before I keep going, if you notice, it's kind of hard to see, but in the sander, I'm going to give you an exaggerated example. I'm kind of tipping the head forward and just slightly leaning it off to my right hand side. So the sander is what's turning the wheel right now, and I'm slowing it down by using the rope back there. I want this thing turning at like a walking pace. One thing I'm going to do real quick, color in some of these deep gouges. And again, these are your reference spots. If you have anything really, you know, like a rock chip or something hard like that, the Sharpie is going to tell you when it is gone. Just make sure you color them in deep enough to see them. When we get right up to that back wall, I want to be real careful not to push in too far. I'm okay with the sander riding up into this little area right here, because the when we sanded the face side, the sander does not hit that. So it's okay if it walks up into that. What I don't want it doing is walking up into this, which we're going to have to go back and fix if we let that happen. Okay, I'm gonna bring you guys in here and show you what that looks like. So I just made 4 passes, actually maybe five or 6 sheets of 80 grit. Whatever you do not get out now is going to stay with the wheel. I'll be frank with you. So one thing I want you guys to keep in mind is the more material we remove from here, the less weight capacity that these now have. So from the factory, Weld rated these at 3,200 pounds. So if you're one of those guys that has to have the one little nick out that's right here that needs a 36 grit flap disc to get out, and you want to sand your wheel until it's paper thin, just keep that in mind. Me personally, I'm okay with having a teeny tiny nick or ding or pit here and there. I don't want them all over, but you know, that is what we're looking for, is a nice smooth finish. You notice how tight these grains are to each other. I'm keeping this wheel at a walking speed, and I'm doing that for a reason. The tighter these grains are, the easier it is to distinguish them from the next grit and get them out. So all right, in an effort to not make this video any longer than it has to be, I'm gonna go ahead and strap up and fly through these next 6 grits and get these things ready to polish.
People like you got nothing better to do than throw rocks at things that shine. Well, you ought to be chasing your own dreams instead of shooting holes in mine. Then again, keep it coming, keep your big mouth running, keep kicking me while I'm down. Hop on the bandwagon, man, while you can, better doubt me now. Keep building that chip up on my shoulder, keep feeding that monkey on my back. I can feel your hot air blowing in colder, stoking this fire up under my ass. Got me living for the day, gonna see my face big as life and laughing out loud. Loving all you haters, begging you to doubt me now. Like a walk-on quarterback, I wanna be Cadillac, a backup to a third string. I'm outside the box, ain't got no shot at the bullseye or the brass ring. Yeah, I heard it all, bet you thought I'd crawl under a rock and never wanna come out. But I'll never let you give me a reason to doubt me now. So keep building that chip up on my shoulder, keep feeding that monkey on my back. I can feel your hot air blowing in colder, stoking this fire up under my ass. Got me living for the day, gonna see my face big as life and laughing out loud. Loving all you haters, begging you to doubt me now. Come on! Shoulder, keep feeding that monkey on my back. I can feel your hot air blowing in colder, stoking this fire up under my ass. Got me living for the day, gonna see my face big as life last.
All right, fellas, we are done rotary sanding. So we are moving on to our 800 pass, and I wanted to stop it and show you this. So see these ribs right here? Hold on. They're like little sanding scratches. You can see them here, you can see them down the lip, right here. We are going to sand with our 800 until we cannot see those at all. And it's nice to use the DA because because it's a different sanding direction, rotation, whatever you want to call it. It shows it really, really well. So I'm going to do a real quick pass. Watch. Now, if you look closely, let's see if I can show it. It actually highlighted all of the ribs. Yeah, now you could see it really good there. So it highlights it when you first start. By the time you're done, and it might take you 5-6 sheets of 800 to do this, none of those ribs from our rotary should be visible. So I'm going to do that real quick, and we'll come back after we're done. Alright guys, that's what you should have. Notice that's after 800. You can actually see reflection already in the barrels. So that's going to make it really nice and easy for us to polish. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get to the polishing. Alright guys, we're going to cut the lug pad right now. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Just want to show you what's going on. So because the way our wheel stand is with the wheel bearing, this is kind of a necessary step, because once it's mounted up, you can't get to it. I've set out 2 machines. So that is our sander with a mini buff on it. And I have our variable with a worn out cut buff. We're going to use a worn buff because as they're worn, they kind of flex into some of those grooves right in there. So I'm going to hit that real quick. We're going to go in 2 different directions. So I'm going to cut everything going clockwise, and then I'm going to cut it going counterclockwise. You'll see that. Alright, so what I'm doing now, I'm going to use a little bit of mineral spirits on a rag, and all that rouge from cutting this, I'm just going to wipe it on there and it'll dissolve it. Okay, now the last thing that we have to do before we chuck this thing up on a stand, I'm going to take a little bit of our M5. I have an old flannel wheel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run around this thing and use the flannel and the M5 to flick out all that mineral spirits. At the same time, it's going to clean it up and make it extra pretty. So when I do this, the first pass, I'm actually going to angle it perpendicular to the wheel. And what I'm trying to do is grab the inside of these lug seats and get everything out of it that way. So once I go like this and I get all 8 lugs that way, then we'll actually turn it and do the same thing that we did on our color. We're not running this fast. I'm only running it about 1,000, 1,300 RPM, something like that. And that'll clean it up and get us going and ready to mount this thing back up and make it pretty. switching gears for a second, I want to explain why we're going to do a 3-angle cut on this wheel. Well, multiple angles for every stage that we do. This is a article from Molly. If you're a motorhead or a gearhead, you've probably heard it before. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I know that that guy is out there that's going to fight me saying that I'm telling people to do extra unnecessary steps. So why are we cutting from 3 different angles? What this says, and it's actually regarding crankshaft polishing. So metal removal tends to raise burrs. This is true of nearly all metal removal processes. When we are polishing, that's what we're doing, is removing metal. Grinding and polishing procedures produces burrs that are so small we can't see or feel them, but they are there and can damage bearings in the shaft surface. Rather than burrs, let's call what results from grinding and polishing microscopic fuzz. This better describes what is left by these processes. This microscopic fuzz has a grain or lay to it like hair on a dog's back. The direction which the grinding wheel or polishing belt passes over the surface will determine the lay of the fuzz or the hair on the dog's back. In order to remove this fuzz, the surface from each successive operation should pass over the journal in the opposite direction so that the fuzz will be bent back over and removed. Polishing the same direction as grinding would not effectively remove the fuzz because it would merely lay down, then spring back up again. Polishing must therefore be done opposite to grinding in order to improve the surface. So what it's saying, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but you can see that fuzz or that diagram that they're showing you. I've noticed that my results look a lot better when I cut in multiple directions. So like in the barrel, I'll 45 it this way first, then I'll come back this way, 45 that way, and then my last pass is going to be perpendicular, and then we're just going to drive it in. So you'll see that in a minute. Couple things real quick just to go over before we get started. First off, with regarding mounting your buff to the machine, you want to find the flap. So right here, make sure that that flap, this buff is only going to move in this direction, so you want it to go down. If this was on backwards, this would try to open up as it was turning. These machines will kick back on you no different than a chainsaw. So in order to avoid that, anytime that you're working on the wheel, your handle should always be off to the right side of the buffing wheel. If it's any other direction, it's on wrong, you're probably going to have a problem. So this, when this is coming this way, so what I'm saying is you can come onto an edge like this. Now, if we were to hit up here and come off this, it's going to kick back and end up in your face. So a couple things to try to avoid that, and make sure that it is not going to hit you or cause problems. Anytime you're working, if you were to pick the buff up, this handle should hit you in the chest. So if I'm working like this, it's coming back this way. If I'm working like this, it's coming back this way. When we cut, so let me talk about what we're doing first. So we're going to start with the face. We're going to cut over here at about the 9 o'clock position. That is going to bring the wheel in a counterclockwise rotation. It's going to pull all the grain down on that side of the face. We're then going to come over to the other side, and somewhere between about 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock is generally where I like to work at. That is going to bring the wheel in a clockwise rotation. So remember, that's what we were talking about with pulling the grain the opposite direction. I'm going to come back, make one more pass this way. I am going to push this wheel into these holes. We're going to cut that little bevel right there at the same time that we're doing the face. Once we get the face done, we're going to come out and we're going to work on a crusher ring. Now, depending on how I'm feeling, we might actually play around with some of the dings and dents with the mini buff, just so that way we can really hone in and focus on one spot at a time. You notice I already have it chucked up with a little miniature yellow cutting wheel. When you're working on the face as well as the crusher ring, so 439T, it a little goes a long way. I mean, you'll see, I will rake this buff in and then I'll apply this, so you know, we'll put it in pretty heavy at first, but after that I'm just going to spoon feed this buffing wheel with the compound. You really just need to touch it and it'll reload itself. That is the beauty of this stuff. To be frank with you, comparative or relative to some of the other things I've tried, 1 bar of this seems like it lasts about 4 or 5 bars of any other type of cutting compound that I've played with. So when we're working on the face, you're going to be reapplying compound a lot, because you're going in and every time you hit one of these edges, it's trying to knock all that compound out of your buff. Same out here on the crusher ring. When we get into the barrel, you're not really, there's nothing that's really taking the compound off of the buff except for the sanding itself. So that's when we'll spoon feed it. So just to recap before we start, we're going to cut over here and pull all those this way. We're going to come over here, pull them all that way. I'm going to come back and make one more cleanup pass. Then we're going to come out, we're going to do our crusher ring. We'll do the same thing here. So I'm going to pull everything this way, and then I'm going to come down here and pull it all that way. At a minimum 2 steps, we'll probably do 3, we'll see. As far as the barrel, once again, we're going to 45 the wheel this way first. And something that's very important, I want you to think of the contact area of this buff as a torch. So we are building heat and we are driving our heat in. If we just make a straight pass right there, we are not going to be very effective. Everything about the cutting process of the metal polishing has to do with building and retaining heat. So think of it just like the flame of a torch. You have to heat it up first, and then you got to drive it in, you know, or you can, you know, make multiple passes if you have to. But the idea is to get this whole surface, you know, heated up relatively evenly and cut it. We're going to rake in our machine, a brand new buff. We are running the machine wide open. So 3,500 RPMs, whatever the max setting is. This is for your cut.
There's a guy in the steel toes covered in dirt, just a rock and roll t-shirt, headed to work with a pack of Red Man in his pocket. He's kinda red, man, but he's rockin'. Wears a beat-up Tilly and a Marshall stack, little Marshall Tucker and a six-pack. Wears the good old boys and the good old days, straight up getting sideways. We back, we back, we back in the speakers, back in black, getting blasted in the bleachers. It's probably true what my mama said, I do it just like my daddy did. We back, we back, we back in the saddle, back on stage making the whole place rattle. Back with the A-team, train on the track. Thought we were gone, but you're wrong, now it's on. We back. Where's a chick wearing blue jeans, a little too tight? Got a grip on a koozie if it's what she likes. Getting picked up in a pickup and kicking it with guys like us. We back, we back, we back in the speakers, back in black, getting blasted in the bleachers. It's probably true what my mama said, I do it just like my daddy did. We back, we back, we back in the saddle, back on stage making the whole place rattle. Back with the A-team, train on the track. Thought we were gone, but you're wrong, now it's on. We back. Sun comes up and sun goes down. Yeah. Everything good comes back around.
Alright guys, what you saw me just do, I took the mineral spirits, wiped down all the excess rouge. This is also going to give us a guide for where we have been versus where we're going. I have our 60/60 clear treat secondary cut. That is what we're going to pair with 164. I'm going to be running this wheel somewhere between about 1500 and 2200 RPMs. Why the spread? I kind of do it by feel and by appearance. So sometimes the weather will kind of play with color. Usually what I'm looking for is if I start seeing little black speckles pop up in the wheel, I don't want that. So I'll lighten up on pressure. We're not using a lot of pressure to begin with for this step, but I'll lighten up on pressure and then back the speed down until I stop seeing that. With the coloring phase, I'm okay with only doing 2 directions. I know we did 3 with our cutting, so I'll probably start here, finish here, and then we'll go one way this way, you know, finish up, so on and so forth. Okay guys, we're on our last stage. I did a couple of things off camera. I already went ahead and did the lug holes. Basically, use the Dremel for this. All you're going to do is take this, go in, work your way around the holes. I do buy these really cheap bits off of Amazon. They seem to work fine. The other thing that I did, so I wiped the whole wheel down with mineral spirits. This is the last time for that. And when we do our final cleanup pass, what I do is I take a Q-tip and soak it in mineral spirits, and I go into each one of these and wipe them out, every single little false rivet, and then I take a dry one and come back and pick all the rouge out. That's the best way to clean those. So let's go ahead and put the finish pass on this. This time we're only going in two directions on anything that's got a lot of detail like this in the face, just one direction on the barrel. No different than anything else we've done so far. We have these are double stacked 60/60 untreateds. We have these on directionally, so that way the flap does not open while it's spinning. We're going to be running this about somewhere between 1,000 and about 1,400 RPM. So very slow. We're really just looking to knock the dust off and brighten it up while we're there. This is M5. This stuff here, again, you don't over apply this at all. I mean, this bar will almost last you a lifetime. All right. I'd say that's a pretty mean looking wheel. if you've made it this far in the video, first off, thanks for sticking around. I always start with my backsides first, so the beauty of video editing allows me to put the starting point at the back of the video. Really not doing anything different. By now you've already seen the front sides. The only thing that I'm going to do a little bit different is I'm going to take this, as called a buff and blend. We didn't talk about this in the beginning, but I'm going to use this to knock all that black out of that area. Outside of that, we're doing everything else exactly the same way that we did the front side. One thing to know about this is it can only be spun up to 1,000 RPMs. If you run these any faster, they will come apart. They are available from Spectrum, by the way.